Hey everyone, welcome to Ex-Fundie Diaries. My name is Elly, my pronouns are she, her, and today I would like to share some of my experiences growing up queer in Christian fundamentalism. If you've seen some of my past videos, you know that I am bisexual, and the first signs of this showed up around age 13. But long before that, I was a queer kid, and my Fundie world was hard at work to force me into its gender norms. I used to think that the term queer was just an umbrella term for anyone who was not straight or cisgender. And it definitely can be, but lately I've been learning that it's a little bit more complex than that. I want to share these tweets by V. LaBianca that I think really encapsulate the definition of queer that I'm starting to embrace more and more. So V says, as a former conservative Christian, I can tell you one thing. The outrage around Lil Nas is not about him being gay per se, it's about him celebrating it, especially in a way that does not conform to cis white expectations. Gay is forgivable, queer is not. You can absolutely be both at once. Gay is a sexual orientation, queer is a social thing, actively queering what is considered normal, polite, or moral in a way that challenges the status quo. And when I look back on my experiences growing up, I was pushing against the status quo at a very young age. And I can see that my true self was trying so hard to get out, even in the midst of the Fundie world. One of my favorite podcasts, The Dirty Rotten Church Kids, had Grace Baldridge on for a recent episode. And something that Grace said took my breath away. As queer people, you don't grow up as yourself because you're so conditioned by outward messages of how to fit in. And so you sort of create this alternate persona. And I really resonate with that. I think when I was really young, I was trying to be myself, my queer self. But the older that I got, the more and more I conformed to what was expected of me because of my gender. And so I think certain parts of me got lost along the way. And I want to honor those parts by sharing them with you now. When I was a little kid, I loved animals so much that I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I didn't just love the animals that girls are expected to love, like the very soft and cuddly ones. Although I did love those, especially dogs. And dogs are still my favorite animal to this day. But when I was little, I adored reptiles, especially lizards and snakes. My dad was a soccer coach, and I remember one time the family of one of the players that he coached had us over for dinner, and this kid had an entire wall of reptiles in his room, and I was so jealous. I just stood there in front of this wall of snakes and lizards, and I was so enthralled, so fascinated by them. We had cable off and on when I was growing up in order for my dad to watch soccer on the sports channels. I've already mentioned that all of the media that my siblings and I were allowed to consume had to be approved first. The only channel that we kids were allowed to watch was Animal Planet and a couple of very carefully chosen children's shows on PBS. But all of it had to be supervised so that the moment there was even a mention of evolution, my mom could turn it off immediately. So it was on Animal Planet that I was introduced to the crocodile hunter. And since I knew that I couldn't grow up to have a job like crocodile hunter because I was a girl and that wasn't allowed in our way of living, I decided I wanted to marry him instead. Because then I could just follow him around and help him with all his animal adventures. Of course, I was very disappointed when I found out that he was already married. I think I ended up resenting Terry a little bit because she beat me to it. But what went along with this love of animals was a love for science. I decided that that was my favorite subject when I was 7 years old. Both of these passions that were developing, wanting to grow up to be a vet and to work with animals, and loving science, were both strongly discouraged because of my gender. Besides the fact that we didn't really do much science, to be honest, some years were mostly just Bible verses about the weather and the earth. I was also not supposed to have a career. I was supposed to grow up to marry a man, have lots of kids, and I was meant to support my husband's dreams and goals and to submit to him and serve him all of my life. And then there was my hair. I begged my mom for a short haircut, and for a long time she said, no, absolutely not. The Bible says that a woman's long hair is her glory. And my mom herself kept her hair very long. But my hobbies were running, climbing, bike riding, playing soccer, and seeing how far I could spit. And long hair gets in the way of all of those things. So I kept begging, and she finally gave in a few times. And I loved my haircut. I liked how it looked, and it gave me so much confidence. I felt like it fit in perfectly with my bike, which was a mountain bike marketed to boys. But unfortunately, my mom made sure that I knew how much she hated my haircut. She even made fun of it. She said that it looked ugly and goofy and that it wasn't feminine enough. As you can imagine, these comments made me feel really ashamed because that haircut felt so much like me. So when she said that, it felt like she didn't like me. I just want to add here that I don't think my mom would remember ever saying those things to me, and if I brought them up to her now, she would be deeply embarrassed and ashamed. My daughter is 7, the same age that I was when I got that haircut for the first time, and my mom would never say something like that to her. She supports my daughter in a way that she never supported me, and I have complicated and bittersweet feelings about that. I love my mom very much, and I know all the reasons why she did the things she did and said the things she said in the context of Christian fundamentalism and her own trauma. My intention in sharing these details with you is not to put her down. I'm not even trying to put my dad down when I talk about his violence and blatant abuse. What I am trying to do is tell the truth about my experiences and about my upbringing, because I know I'm not the only one who has had these experiences, and I know some people may still be going through it right now. I was silenced for most of my life, and speaking things out loud has been and continues to be a huge part of my healing. I'm also very purposeful and unapologetic about criticizing the entire system of white Christian fundamentalism, especially purity culture. Towards the last few years of elementary school, those parts of me were being constantly squashed and pushed down. But I continued to push against gender norms in other ways as I grew up. One of the ways I did this was by refusing to only be friends with other girls. A quick timeline for you on my schooling. Kindergarten through 2nd grade, I went to a small, strict Anglican school. 3rd grade through 5th grade, I was homeschooled. 6th grade, I went back to the Anglican school. And during that 6th grade year, I made friends with both boys and girls. But my parents hated the effect that a little bit of freedom had on me, and they wanted me to be home all the time. So it was only homeschooling after that. And I hated the way that my homeschool community was always trying to separate us by gender. And I fought against it as hard as I could. When I joined an Awana group that became my main social outlet for the next 8 years, I started to consider myself kind of a cross-gender ambassador of sorts. I was always trying to bring the boys and the girls together. I even prayed about it a lot, asking God to help me out in what I felt like was a very holy endeavor. March 28th, 2004. JV is like my whole world right now. Everything that I think of is usually about the people at Awana. Yesterday, we had an awesome JV jam. We do Bible quizzing and competitive games against other JV groups all over the state. It was just an awesome time. When we got there, we practiced games and verses and then went to the opening ceremony where some guy talked about what was going to happen and he announced the different teams. The boys were sitting in a pew behind us and they did the wave when we were announced. Us girls had a lot of fun talking after the ceremony was over. The boys kept trying to tie our ponytails together, and they would always tap us on the shoulder and then blame it on someone else. It was funny. I think that at the beginning of the year, the boys were their own little group and we had ours. But now, I hope, we are getting knit together, slowly, as one big group. I've been praying that by the time we're all in varsity, we'll be a really, really, really close group of friends. We were all talking together, and the boys talk to us regularly now, instead of kind of weird. I think being one team for games was really good. It seems like we were being drawn together. I was thanking God the whole time because it was like we were all a big family. I think the best part of that experience was how we encouraged each other. We would always give high fives after the events, and I screamed so much and so loud that my throat is still sore today. Even if our team took last place in one of the events, we would still encourage each other on. The times when we won were glorious. There was a lot of jumping up and down, screaming, high-fiving, and hugging. I want to get so close that the opposite sexes can hug in the celebration, and that wouldn't be gross, but that's down the road. Dear Jesus, thank you for bringing us closer than before. I think the JV Jam was a really good experience for us. Lord, you say that if we follow you, you will give us the desires of our hearts. This is my desire. I really need a home away from home, an extended family. I would be so grateful if you would bring us that close. Please, bring the boys and girls together. Don't let them be separate. Help gender to disappear. I really want this, Lord. Thank you for what you've done so far. Continue to do it. Thank you. Amen. I think it's really cool that I prayed for gender to disappear. I think that says a lot about what was important to me, even at that time. I just loved people, and I thought it was so ridiculous and frustrating the way that we were expected to behave based on our gender. To any other queer kids who may be watching this, no matter how old you are valid, and you are wonderful just the way that you are. If anyone watching has experiences of growing up queer they would like to share, please put them down in the comments. I'm looking forward to reading them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.